قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, وَالْأَمْرُ مِنْ مَكْرِ اللَّهِ, and safety from God's punishment is one of the sins of the heart. وَالْقُنُوطُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ, and despair of God's mercy, yani being hopeless of God's mercy, is one of the sins of the heart. الشرح, the explanation. أن من معاصي القلبية التي هي من الكبائر, is that one of the heart sins that is a major sin, الأمن من مكر الله والقنوط من رحمة الله. Among those sins is safety from God's punishment, meaning feeling safe from God's punishment, and despair from God's mercy, meaning feeling hopeless of receiving God's mercy. Yani feeling doomed that you will for sure be punished by God, indubitably and inevitably. فَأَمَّا الْأَمْنُ مِنْ مَكْرِ اللَّهِ. Now concerning feeling safe from God's punishment, فَقَدْ فَسَّرَهُ بَعْضُ الشَّافِعِيَّةِ بِأَنَّهُ الْإِسْتِرْسَالُ فِي الْمَعَاصِي مَعَ الْإِتِّكَالِ عَلَى الرَّحْمَةِ. Some Shafi'is have explained the name of this sin to be, yani they explain this sin to be indulgence in sins while relying on God's mercy. Yani indulgence, I mean by that insistence on sins while relying on God's mercy. فَهَذَا مِنَ الْمَعَاصِي الْكَبَائِرِ. This is one of the major sins. مِمَّا لَا يَنْقُلُ عَنِ الْمِلَّةِ. This is amongst the major sins that do not take one out of the religion, do not transport one from the religion. So understand that this is how some of the Shafi'is explain the meaning of this sin, and to say that this does not take a person out of the religion is a matter of agreement. Not the definition, it's not the definition that they agreed upon, but the meaning they do agree upon, which is to indulge in sin, to insist on sin while relying on God's mercy. They have no disagreement that this is a major sin that does not transport one out of the religion. But they don't have an agreement that the name of this sin is al-amnu min makrillah, feeling safe from God's punishment. وَهُوَ عِنْدَ الْحَنَفِيَّةِ كُفُرٌ. And this sin, yani this name, according to the Hanafis, refers to blasphemy. نَاقِلٌ عَنِ الْمِلَّةِ. This name refers to a blasphemy that transports one out of the religion. كما قال ذلك أبو جعفر الطحاوي والنسفي وغيرهما من الحنفية. Just as said by Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi and al-Nasafi and other Hanafis. Both of those texts that we study them, as you know. وتفسيره عندهم اعتقاد أن الله لا يعذب على المعاصي بعد ثبوت الإيمان بالمرة. And the meaning of this sin, according to them, is that Allah does not punish for sins after the confirmation of faith at all. فالذي يقول أنا واجب لي دخول الجنة والفوز لا يجوز عكسه. So the one who says it is necessary for me Yani, it's like he's saying, it is God's duty that I enter the garden and that I be triumphant. And the opposite of that is not possible. فَقَدْ كَفَرْ, then he has blasphemed. لأنه يكون جعل أن تكون عاقبته غير ذلك مستحيلا, because he has deemed his fate being otherwise impossible. This is, by the way, the creed of the Christians. Yani, amongst the Islamic factions, that's the creed of the Murji'ah, that no believer shall be punished. And this is the creed of the Christians, which is that they have already been saved. Jesus has spared them of their sins by his sacrifice. So they have no fear of the punishment of God. وَأَمَّا الْقُنُوطُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ, now concerning despairing from God's mercy, فَتَفْسِيرُهُ عِنْدَ الشَّافِعِيَّةِ أَنْ يُسِيءَ الْعَبْدُ الظَّنَّ بِاللَّهِ, its explanation according to the Shafi'is is for a man slave of God to think ill of God. فَيَعْتَقِدَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ لَهُ الْبَتَّةً, and thus he has the conviction that God shall not forgive him at all. وَأَنَّهُ لَا مَحَالَةَ يُعَذِّبُهُ, and that it is inevitable and indubitable that God shall indeed torture him. وَذَلِكَ نَظَرًا لِكَثْرَةِ ذُنُوبِهِ مَثَلًا, and that would be out of looking at the abundance of his sins, for example. فهو بهذا المعنى كبيرة من الكبائر, so according to this meaning, this is a sin that is a major sin. So when we say sin, when we say sin openly like that with no restriction or qualification, it means less than blasphemy. We don't say usually sin merely, and we mean blasphemy. So this is a sin, but blasphemy is a sin, but it's on another level. So this is a sin that is a major sin. لا ينقل عن الإسلام, it does not transport one from Islam. It's not blasphemy. أما عند الحنفية, and again, same thing, this meaning is agreed upon. The meaning, not the interpretation of the name. أما عند الحنفية, and as for the Hanafi interpretation of this name, فهو اعتقاد أن الله لا يغفر ذنوب العصاة, it is the conviction that God does not forgive the sins of the sinners, the sins of the disobedient ones. فهو عندهم كفر ناقل عن الإيمان, and so it is, according to them, a blasphemy that transports one out of faith. And this is, in meaning, agreed upon also. كما صرح بذلك الطحاوي وغيره, as al-Tahawi and others said explicitly. فعلى هذا عدوه كفرا, so according to this, they have counted being hopeless of God's mercy as blasphemy. It's because of the way they interpret the meaning of this name. ومعنى هذا أن الخوارج كفار, and the meaning of this is that the Khawarij, the outlaws, are blasphemers. لأنهم يعتقدون أن مرتكب الكبيرة كافر مخلد في النار. Because they believe that the committer of a major sin is a disbeliever who shall be immortally in the fire. وفيه أيضا تكفير المعتزلة. And according to this interpretation, there is also a deeming of the Mu'tazila as disbelievers. لأنهم يعتقدون أنه لا يغفر لمن مات مرتكبا للكبيرة. Because they hold the conviction that there is no forgiveness for anyone who dies as a committer of a major sin. لقولهم إنه ليس بمسلم ولا كافر. Because they said the one who committed the major sin is neither a Muslim nor a kafir. Yani, the Mu'tazila, they have an odd saying, which is that the committer of a major sin is neither a believer nor a disbeliever, and that rather he is in a status between the two. And they call this al-manzilatu bayn al-manzilatayn, the status between the two statuses, or the station between the two stations. And they add to that, they say, and he shall be, though, in hell forever with the kuffar. So they agreed with the outlaws from a certain point of view, because the outlaws said the one who committed a major sin shall be in hell forever. If he dies like that without repentance, he shall be in hell forever. The Mu'tazila said the one who committed a major sin, if he dies like that without repentance, he shall be in hell forever. But the Khawarij said he's a kafir, and the Mu'tazila said he's not a kafir. So that's where they disagreed with the Khawarij. They agree with the Khawarij, though, that he's not a Muslim. The Khawarij said he's not a Muslim. The Mu'tazila said he's not a Muslim, so they agree with them there. And the Khawarij said he'll be in hell forever, and the Mu'tazila said he will be in hell forever, so they agree there. And the Khawarij said he is actually a kafir, and the Mu'tazila said no, he's not a kafir though. They said rather he left belief without entering into disbelief. And yes, though, he will be in hell forever. And this is why some of the scholars said that the Mu'tazila are Khawarij hermaphrodites. They said the Mu'tazila are Khawarij hermaphrodites, sissies. They are Khawarij sissies. Because they wouldn't take the step here that the Khawarij took to confirm that the major sinner is a kafir, and because they didn't get up to kill Muslims like the Khawarij did. The Khawarij were terrorists. They rather debated with Muslims and tried to throw doubts into their convictions. So they fought the Muslims with their tongues and deemed the major sinner as a non-Muslim in hell forever. So they weren't as tough as the Khawarij. So they were sissies. They were sissy Khawarij. وطريق النحاة وطريق النجاة وطريق النجاة الذي ينبغي أن يكون عليه المؤمن. And the path of success that the believer should be upon, the path that should be the path of the believer, is أن يكون خائفا راجيا, is that he would be hopeful and afraid. Hopeful and afraid. Although in the Arabic there's no conjunction here. خائفا راجيا. It means hopeful, fearful, but maybe it doesn't come off as clear in the English without a conjunction. Hopeful and fearful. يخاف عقاب الله على ذنوبه, fearing God's punishment for his sins. ويرجو رحمة الله, and hoping for God's mercy. Yani, that's the case of the believer. He's like a bird with two wings. You can't fly with one wing. You can't fly straight, that is, with one wing. أما عند الموت فيغلب الرجاء على الخوف. But upon death, yani when the believer is dying, then it's permissible for him to make his hope overcome his fear, to be more hopeful that God will have mercy on him than to be afraid that God will punish him. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon you. Said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him. وَالتَّكَبُّرُ عَلَى عِبَادِهِ, and among the sins of the heart is arrogance with God's manslaves. وَهُوَ رَدُّ الْحَقِّ عَلَى قَائِلِهِ, it is of two aspects. It has two aspects. Throwing the truth back to whoever said it. وَاسْتِحْقَارُ النَّاسِ, and there's the word, deeming the people insignificant. Deeming the people insignificant. Contempt. And yani, deeming the people contemptible. The Muslim people. الشرح أن من معاصي القلب التي هي من الكبائر التكبر على عباد الله. The explanation is that amongst the sins of the heart, that is one of the major sins, is arrogance with God's manslaves. وَهُوَ رَدُّ الْحَقِّ عَلَى قَائِلِهِ, that happens by throwing the truth back to whoever says it. مع العلم بأن الصواب مع القائل, while knowing that the speaker is truthful, while knowing that the truth is with the speaker. لنحو كون القائل صغير السن, because of such reasons as the speaker being young. فيستعظم أن يرجع إلى الحق من أجل أن قائله صغير السن. So one finds it an enormous thing to resort to the truth because the one who's saying it is young, yani younger than he is. أو لأنه من الخاملين والمردود عليه من المشهورين البارزين, or because the truth sayer is an unknown, yani a nobody, and the one who's rejecting the truth is famous. He's famous, وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ, and the likes of that. So that's one aspect of arrogance. وَاسْتِحْقَارُ النَّاسِ أي ازدراؤهم. And as for deeming the people contemptible, it means looking down on them. كأن يتكبر على الفقير, like for him to be arrogant with the poor person. وينظر إليه نظر احتقار, and he looks at him, like literally, that is, he literally glances at him with a look of contempt. Oh, يعرض عنه, or he turns away from him in disgust. أو يترفع عليه في الخطاب, or he talks to him, he addresses him with contempt. He addresses him like he's turned off by him. وَقَدْ نَهَى اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عِبَادَهُ عَنِ التَّكَبُّرِ. God, exalted is He, forbade His man slaves from arrogance. قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى, said God, exalted is He, وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. That's the 18th verse of Surah Luqman. It means do not turn your cheek to the people. It means don't turn away from the people because of your contempt for them. أي لا تعرض عنهم متكبرا. Don't turn away from them arrogantly. This is some of Luqman's advice to his son. والمعنى أقبل على الناس بوجهك. The meaning is approach the people face to face. متواضعا, humbly. ولا تولهم شق وجهك وصفحته. And don't give them half of your face. You talk about, for example, a person, he's like standing there with you and he won't look at you. Turns his face from you, doesn't want to look at you, he's disgusted by you. وَصَفْحَتَهُ كَمَا يَفْعَلُ الْمُتَكَبِّرُونَ, like what the arrogant people do. وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. And Luqman's advice to his son continues. And do not walk through the land proudly, boastfully. Don't stroll proudly. أي لا تمشي لأجل المرح والأشر. أي لا تمشي مشية الكبر والفخر. Meaning, don't walk, don't stroll with arrogance and boastfulness. Subhanallah. Like, one might actually literally puff his chest out. That's how arrogant he is. He puts his nose up. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Sometimes this human being thinks so highly of himself. And it's like even the human being as if he gets high on his own delusions of grandeur. So, what do you think of this arrogant one? This arrogant one, he doesn't like you for one reason or another. So, yeah, I mean, he probably is a turnoff for you or maybe lots of people, except people like him. Some people like arrogant people. Maybe they're arrogant themselves. Okay, so he turned you off. Then what else? What else about him? Yani, you're going to be heartbroken about this guy all day because he doesn't like you? Or are you going to just shrug your shoulder and say it's his problem? His sickness of his heart is his own issue. And khalas, you're not going to worry about it. I think should be this last thing I told you. So what about the case of someone who's a racist? Somebody is a racist. You're going to be mad all day, crying all day. He doesn't like me because I'm black. He doesn't like me because I'm white. Who cares? That's his problem, Yani. He has an issue. He needs to fix in himself. But let me tell you something while I'm here. Some people, they accuse Muslims of being racists. Yani, unrightfully. But let's say, for argument's sake, some Muslim was a racist. He doesn't like people of other race despite they're Muslims. Their being Muslims doesn't prevent him from disliking them for their race. Let's, for argument's sake, say someone has this in his heart. and he's a Muslim. And let's say this Muslim, uh, he works in the da'wah. So are you going to not work in the da'wah with him? You're going to say, no, I'm not. I have nothing to do with him. He's a racist. No, you're not going to do that, because who cares? So you just work with him. Let's say even he's a sheikh and he teaches religion properly. He doesn't pervert the religion. He just doesn't like you. For one reason or another, maybe it's your race. Are you going to not learn from him? I suggest, if you know he teaches the religion properly, he won't lie, learn from him and leave the sickness of his heart between him and his Lord. Don't worry about it. And I remind myself. Although, the racism issue doesn't bother me personally. وروى مسلم من حديث عياض بن حمار رضي الله عنه أنه قال. And Muslim narrated in the hadith of Iyad ibn Himar, may Allah accept from him, that he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, the messenger of God صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إن الله تعالى أوحى إلي أن تواضعوا. God, exalted is He, has indeed revealed to me, for you, that's you is plural, for you to be humble. حتى لا يبغي أحد على أحد ولا يفخر أحد على أحد. So that no one transgresses against another, and no one is arrogant with another. وكان من دعاء رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم أحيني مسكينا أي متواضعا. And one of the supplications of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, "Oh Allah," so I'll translate it this way, like as literally as it appears to me. "Oh Allah, give me life as a poor person, a miskin. Give me ahyini, revive me, or give me life miskina, as a poor person." متواضعا, it means make me humble. وروى مسلم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. And Muslim narrated that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, وما تواضع أحد لله إلا رفعه الله تعالى. No one lowered himself for the sake of God, but that God raised him. Exalted is He. وقال بعض الأكابر. And some of the elites said, كن أرضى تكن لله أرضى. Be down to earth, and you will be to God more acceptable. انتهى. End quote. فالذي يضع أواني الذهب والفضة أو الفضة في خزانة مثلا. So the one who puts golden and silver utensils in a cabinet, for example, like he has what they call a china cabinet, so he can display his bowls and plates of gold and silver, his forks and spoons, just as an example, or vases, for example. بحيث يراها الناس للفخر, so that the people will see it. And he does that for the boastfulness about it, for showing off, but not just the showing off, for the boastfulness of it, to show, for the boastfulness, the fakhr. أي حتى يقول الناس ما أغناه, meaning so that the people would say how wealthy he is. So this is like showing off. Just like the one who shows off, so the people would say, look how much he prays, look how well he recites Quran. يوجد عنده شيء ليس عند غيره. So the people would say, he has what others don't have. فعليه ذنب كبير. Then he has a big sin. كل شيء يفعله الإنسان للفخر من لباس جميل ومركب جميل فهو حرام. Everything that a person does for boastfulness, for I don't know if flamboyancy is the right word here. Whether it's beautiful clothing or nice ride, that's haram. But the meaning is what we're discussing now. If flamboyancy is not the right word, then don't take that. But just usually when a person's flamboyant means he's like extreme in his show. أما الذي يلبس ثوبا أنيقا للتجمل فقط فهو جائز. But as for a person who wears exquisite clothing only for beautification, not for, stunting, Although that's like colloquial though, Flossing. It's flossing. As for the one who wears exquisite clothing just for beautification, only means not for showing himself to be, a Mac or the likes of that amongst the people, then this is permissible. It's not haram. وَالْفَخْرُ مَعْنَاهُ أَنْ يَفْعَلَ ذَلِكَ لِيُعْجَبَ بِهِ النَّاسِ. And the fakhr that I've been translating as boasting, it means for one to do that so that people will be impressed with him. So, subhanAllah, then we see that's close to riya, insincerity. But riya is going to be in your worship. أي يريد أن يكون له اختصاص عند الناس بالنظر إليه والتفخيم. Meaning, he wants to be, to have specialness amongst the people. This distinction by them looking at him and magnifying him. والله تعالى لا يحب الفخر في الثياب وفي الأثاث وفي المسكن وما أشبه ذلك. And Allah Ta'ala does not accept the boastfulness in clothing, nor in furniture, nor in housing, or what's like that. Something comes to my mind too while I'm reading this to you. It's not exactly the same thing though. Now some people, they get a tattoo and they want people to look at their tattoo. So they get this tattoo somewhere, like let's say he gets a tattoo on his leg. So because he wants the people to look at his tattoo so much, he rolls his pants leg up. So it can be shown and seen, noticed. For no other reason. And you'll see in his body movements, like he moves in such a way so that, like if it's on his arm, he'll move that arm so that when he talks to you, as if he's just talking, but really he's like flashing his tattoo at you. Just now came to my mind because that tickles me. وقد ورد في الحديث الذي رواه البخاري في الأدب بأن المتكبرين يحشرون يوم القيامة كأمثال الذر. And it came in the hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari in his book Al-Adab al-Mufrad, not his book Sahih, that the arrogant ones shall be gathered on resurrection day with the size of ants, small ants at that. The dhar is a small ant, not just an ant. يَطُؤُهُمُ النَّاسُ بِأَقْدَامِهِمْ. And the people shall be stepping upon them with their feet, and they won't die from that. وقال سيدنا علي رضي الله عنه. And our master Ali said, may Allah accept from him, ما لابن آدم والفخر. What's up with the son of Adam and his boasting? أوله نطفة وآخره جيفة. His inception, his beginning is a sperm drop, and his end is a corpse. معناه كيف يفعل ذلك وهو يعرف أن أوله نطفة وآخره جيفة? Question mark. This means, how could a human be arrogant and boastful while he knows that his inception is a mere sperm drop? That's something repulsive even. And his end is a corpse. وَالْجِيفَةُ الْجِسْمُ لَا رُوحَ فِيهِ. The meaning of jifa that I translated as corpse is a body without a soul in it. وَقَدْ رَوَى الْحَافِظُ ابْنُ حَجَرٍ فِي الْأَمَالِ. بِإِسْنَادٍ حَسَنٍ. And Hafiz ibn Hajar narrated in his Amali, his hadith dictation sessions, with a fair chain, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, that the Messenger of God صلى الله عليه وسلم said, إنكم لتغفلون عن أفضل العبادة التواضع. You have indeed, certainly, or you have indeed by God been heedless of the best worship, humbleness, يعني humility. معنى الحديث أن التواضع من أعظم العبادات عند الله. The meaning of the hadith is that humbleness is amongst the greatest of worships to God, subhanallah. So how's that going to be? Yani, how would that look? How would you do it? That's going to be, for example, by you, when you're in the presence of the people, you say to yourself, for example, and you don't have to say it to anyone else, just within yourself, these people, these believers are better than me. And I am such and such. And let me lower my head, for example, and like this. But correct your intention, so that it will be a worship. And take a benefit from the Prophet ﷺ calling this the best worship, so that you won't be confused when you see other things that are the most of something. Yani, they are called the most of this or the best of that, when you know that there's something better. The best bodily worship is as-salah, the obligatory prayer. That itself is greater than humbleness. And believing in Allah and His Messenger is even greater than prayer. Despite that, there are worships that are in themselves superior to the mere worship of humbleness. The Prophet called this afdalul ibadah, the best of worship. Because this means it's in the realm of the best of worship. So take that. So you're not going to be confused when something is called the best of this or the best of that. Like, for example, lesson we had maybe a couple weeks ago in prayer, about prayer. And I mentioned the hadith that the best prayer after the obligatory prayer is the night prayer. That's the hadith. أفضل الصلاة بعد الفريضة صلاة الليل أو كما قال. And I did mention in the lesson that doesn't mean it's the very best prayer. But still, someone was concerned about the meaning of this hadith. Or not the meaning, but the translation. Because there are prayers better than the night prayer. Sunnah prayer is better than the night prayer. So what clears that up, and other cases, many other cases, is knowing that you could use the superlative, which means better or best, for what's not absolutely the best. Rather, it's going to be in the realm of the best. فالتواضع مطلوب مع الكبار والصغار والأغنياء والفقراء لوجه الله. And so, humbleness is a must. Yani, matlub means sought. What this means is, humbleness is something that you should practice. Don't leave it out. It is a must with the old and the young and the rich and the poor, for the sake of Allah. وَهُوَ يَدْعُو لِلتَّأَلُّفِ. I think it's supposed to be at-ta'alluf. And it calls for unity, yani camaraderie. It summons camaraderie. It summons fellowship, humbleness. It summons being comfortable with each other. Yeah, very important. Yani, even let's say there's a Muslim you don't feel inclined towards. Let me not even say you don't like him. Let's say you don't feel inclined towards him. You still should say, and I remind myself, you still should say, but he's better than me. Or at the least say, what if he is better than me? Maybe some people are too arrogant to say he is better than me. Maybe if somebody disrespected you, a Muslim, and then you said to him, "Do you think you're better than me?" Or, "What if I'm better than you?" He might say, "You're not." It's because of the arrogance in his heart. We don't know. Or maybe sometimes you might know. يعني based on proofs. وأما التكبر فهو مذموم في وجه المؤمن وغير المؤمن. And as for arrogance, it is blameworthy in the face of a believer and in the face of a non-believer. Even to be arrogant with a kafir is blameworthy. لأن الأنبياء لما دعوا الكفار إلى الدين ما كانوا متكبرين عليهم. Because the prophets, when they called the disbelievers to the religion, they were not arrogant with them. لأنهم لو كانوا متكبرين في وجوه الكفار لنفروا عنهم. Because had they been arrogant in the faces of the disbelievers, then they would have been repelled from them. The kuffar would have been repelled from the prophets because it's a repulsive attribute. The arrogance. You see how someone looks at people with contempt, how he talks about others. Subhanallah. How he brags about himself. Very repulsive. Once I encountered a guy, a kafir. So we had a debate. He's so arrogant, this kafir. So he was so arrogant. So I said to him, "You are very ignorant." He said, "No, I'm not ignorant. I'm arrogant. There's a difference." And he was right. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. وأحوال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وغيره من الأنبياء تدل على ذلك. And the situations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and other prophets proves this. فقد كان رجل من اليهود في المدينة عامل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ببيع إلى أجل. For example, there was a Jewish man in Medina who did business with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be paid later. ثم جاء اليهودي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل حلول الأجل. Then the Jew came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم before the debt was due. فقال يا بني عبد المطلب فقال يا بني عبد المطلب إنكم مطل. So he said, "Oh, clan of Abdul Muttalib," he means the Prophet, "you are procrastinators." Yani, there's another word. What do you call someone who doesn't pay his debts? Like, as an insult, like he's cheap, something like that. فلم يعنفه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And the Prophet was not rough with him for this. ولا أظهر الغضب منه. And he didn't display any anger with him. ليدعوه ذلك إلى التفكر في شأن الرسول. So that the Prophet's behavior with him would make him think about the messenger's case. من حيث تواضعه وحلمه. From the perspective of his humility and his forbearance, yani his patience, his being slow to anger. فيميل إلى الدخول في الإسلام. And so then he would be inclined towards Islam. Don't you know some people, if you don't display the anger that they think you should display, instead of thinking that you are humble or that you are patient, they say you are, what do they call it? Passively aggressive. Like someone insults you in your face and then you don't budge. It doesn't bother you. And you don't display anything to him. You say, "Ah, you're passive aggressive." I'm not, for example. You might not be. Just, you don't faze me. It's not fazing me. You're petty. But I'm not even going to call you petty, even. ثم أمر النبي بوفاء دينه على وجه الإحسان Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded for his debt to be paid to him as a favor because it wasn't even due yet. فهذا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يكفهر في وجه هذا اليهودي الذي أهانه من ذمه وذم عشيرته. I'm not sure the exact translation for this word, but yani, just rough translation as per the context. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't react or be offended by this Jew, in the face of this Jew, this one who belittled him by insulting him and insulting his family. لأن كلامه شامل له ولعشيرته, because what that Jew said includes the Prophet and his family. فكأنه قال أنت يا محمد وعشيرتك تماطلون الدين. It's like that Jew said, you Muhammad and your family, you are people who don't pay your debts. I know there's a word there. فأسلم هذا اليهودي, and then this Jew embraced Islam. لأنه أراد أن يمتحنه, because what he really wanted to do was to test the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. هل يجد فيه العلامات التي هي مذكورة في بعض الكتب القديمة من صفة محمد? Would he find in him the signs that are mentioned in some of the ancient books about the description of Muhammad? فَلَمَّا رَآهَا كُلَّهَا أَسْلَمَ. So when he saw all of them, he embraced Islam. وحصل لسيدنا أحمد الرفاعي رضي الله عنه شبيه لذلك. And something similar to that happened to Master Ahmad al-Rifa'i, may Allah accept from him. فإنه كان ذات يوم يمشي مع جمع من مريديه. He was one day walking with a group of his disciples. فعلم بذلك يهودي, and one Jew knew about that. كان يسمع أن السيد أحمد الرفاعي حليم متواضع. He used to hear that Master Ahmad al-Rifa'i was forbearing and patient. فأراد أن يمتحنه, so he wanted to test him. هل هو كما يصفه الناس كما يصفه الناس هل هو كما يصفه الناس أم لا? Is he as the people describes or not? فأتى إليه, so he went to him. وقال له يا سيد, so he said to him, oh master, أنت أفضل أم الكلب أفضل? Are you better or is a dog better? وقال السيد رضي الله عنه, and so the master said, may Allah accept from him, إن نجوت على الصراط فأنا أفضل. If I safely make it across the bridge on Resurrection Day, then I am better. فأسلم اليهودي وأسلم أهله وكثير من معارفه. And so that Jew embraced Islam, and his family did too, and many of his acquaintances. Subhanallah. فلولا أنه تواضع معه لم يسلم. Had it not been that he was patient with him, he wouldn't have embraced Islam. فلو كان ظهر في وجهه أنه غضب كأنك فهر في وجهه. So had he displayed to him in his face that he was angry, like had he ikfahara in his face, so same word. I'm not sure the exact way to translate it, but roughly because of the context. Had he displayed that he was offended in his face, أو قال له كلمة شتم, or had he said a word of insult to him, ما رغب في الإسلام, he would not then be interested in Islam. لكن أعجبه شدة حلمه وتواضعه. However, He was impressed with how forbearing he was and how humble. فاعترف في نفسه فاعترف في نفسه بأن دين هذا السيد الصحيح هذا السيد صحيح. And so he confessed in himself, inwardly, he confessed inwardly that the religion of this master is correct. تنبيه, notice, قول بعض الناس التكبر على المتكبر التكبر على المتكبر صدقة ضلال مبين. What some people say, that being arrogant to someone who's arrogant is a charity, is clear misguidance. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى. The refuge is sought with God, exalted is He. لأن الله أمر عباده بالعفو والإحسان والتواضع. Because Allah commanded His slaves with pardoning and with doing favors and with humbleness. Or maybe ihsan means good behavior. فيجب تحذير الناس من هذه العبارة. So it's obligatory to warn the people from this phrase. وقائل هذه الكلمة إن أراد أنه بمجافاته يزجره عن التكبر يكون صدقة حقيقة فلا ضرر عليه. And the one who says this word, if what he means is being mean or rough or rude to this arrogant one is a means to scold him concerning his arrogance, so to make him stop being arrogant, so that's a charity in reality, then he did not fall into blasphemy. فَلَا ضَرَرَ عَلَيْهِ. Then he didn't fall into blasphemy. The statement itself means there's no harm on him. Means here, he didn't fall into blasphemy. لكن هذه العبارة لا تجوز. But this phrase is not permissible. So that means it is haram. And the haram is harmful. So that's why the statement means he didn't commit blasphemy. لأن التكبر كيفما كان حرام. Because arrogance, regardless of how it worked, yani arrogance under any circumstances, it's haram, it's forbidden. And I'll leave you with what some of the wise ones said, that it is feared for the one who is arrogant that he will die as a kafir, that he will actually die as a kafir. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. And you might wonder, really? This sin would be a reason for a person to die as a kafir? But then if you have interaction with the right arrogant person, then you'll understand. And there are stories about that, but our time's up now. Do you have any questions?